Tigers supposedly interested in Alec Thomas from Arizona,
Oh,
which
That'd be fun.
well,
would be
Arizona has a ton of outfield depth in their system.
they do. But yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to if Alec Thomas for what? Because I don't think they'd give up Alec Thomas for half a season of Eduardo Rodriguez, but maybe Rodriguez and a reliever. I don't know.
Yeah, Rodriguez and Lorenzen maybe. Like,
You could double up their arms. Yeah, sure. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked at Alec Thomas's stats. He's a tiny little guy that's similar to Corbin Carroll, except without the surprising pop. But yeah,
He got off
I
to
don't
a slow start, I think, this year, and I think he got hurt for a little while. But he had some moments last year when they brought him up. And
yeah. I mean, that would be an interesting one. It's another. He's a lefty, right? Left-handed.
yeah.
Sure.
So he's a 23-year-old, 200 at bats this year, 6 home runs, 765 OPS.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, 619 OPS and 381 at bats. So hasn't really figured it out at the major league level yet, but still young, and I believe he was a pretty highly touted prospect as well.
765 OPS. Where's that rank on the Tigers? That's probably pretty good.
Yeah, that's probably. It would be. I'd be curious if he would be like overall much of an upgrade over someone like Badu, but
not really, honestly.
I like
Badu hasn't been
they have that
lately, but-
Canzone, Dominic both the Dominics, Fletcher and Canzone.
They got a bunch of Dominics over there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Arizona was one of the teams that we thought might be a landing spot for some of the pitching because they are competing, right? And they could use some arms, but that'd be a fun name to play around with. It certainly add some talent to the system.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We did have a question that kind of bleeds into that. If you want to get to that on Twitter, so there's a lot going into this question, but I think it's a good one. So he asked for predictions. Who's the best teams who are the best fit for Eduardo Rodriguez, Michael Lorenzen, and Jose Cisnero? So yeah, we were just talking about like Arizona. I think they're a good fit. I don't know how much you guys look at Baltimore. I've heard they've been sniffing around. Maybe they could be a good fit for those guys. But was there any teams kind of for those veteran pitchers we think are going to get traded? Any teams other than kind of the ones we've already mentioned?
Well, Relio and I did a 2-part trade piece over at the Tigers Minor League Report website, naming some teams where Erod might be a fit. I think the Dodgers, they've had so many pitching injuries, and you might end up, if you trade with them, you might end up getting another young pitcher, which is not the worst thing in the world. Everybody wants bats, but you can use arms too. The one reason I mention them is, they're in a division race with the Giants and the Diamondbacks, and the Giants and the Diamondbacks are two of the worst teams in baseball against left-handed pitching this year. So if you have any more heads-up matchups against them, maybe that helps a little bit. As we saw Skubal kind of dominate the Giants today, they don't hit lefties very well. So that could be a reason for the Dodgers. I also mentioned the Astros. I think they could really use either Lorenzen or Rodriguez. Honestly, they've had so many pitching injuries, and they're a really good team, and they've got managed to fight their way through it. But I think they'd be a fit for all three of those guys. Honestly, they could use Cisnero too for fun. Raj brought up the Brewers. I think the Brewers would be a great fit. They always manage to compete without ever really making big splashes on players, at least not in the last 10, 12 years. Once upon a time they traded for CC Sabathia and Zach Greinke and stuff, but they were always pretty much expiring deals. So I think Erod would make sense there, and there's some fun players in that system. So, and then of course Baltimore. There are a lot of landing places for these guys. So I think the Tigers are in a good position there to get at least some solid talent.
Yeah, I have to believe Erod brings back at least one player that we're like, hey, that's pretty good. I mean, that's something they can work with, I don't know who that's going to be, but I just look at Baltimore and the depth of their system. If there's any kind of, I can't imagine there's actually a bidding war. That's too strong of a thing, but there's a lot of teams who want Erod. They should have no problem picking out a prospect that is pretty attractive, but is kind of superfluous to what they need because they have a lot of guys. So I've been really looking at Baltimore. And then I really think the Rays and Cisnero could be a good match because they love doing funky things with relievers. And I think Cisnero does some some things that you could really work with in their system and be the kind of guy who he can help them get to the finish line this year.
Yeah, and for Steve's question, it was like a 3 or 4 parter. He did ask about the Orioles and like prospects that we could be interested in. I saw something about Kobe Mayo, third base prospect that the Tigers could be interested in. Was there any young players that they had in their system that kind of stand out to you that could maybe interest the Tigers?
Well, the best ones are on the team already. They've done a heck of a job promoting everybody. I mean, Colton Cowser's up and Westberg is up. Obviously, Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson are already there. They've done a lot of promoting. So, but Connor Norby, right?
Yeah.
Maybe having a down year, but certainly a prospect worth noting. I can't imagine they would move Yerstead yet, but he's there. They just have a lot of. You can go pretty far down their list and find some talented guys.
Yeah, and I'll give credit to Rogelio for this one. There's a kid named Cesar Prieto in Baltimore system who is not one of their top 10 prospects, but he is like in their top 30, top 15.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of a Luis Arias player. Like he's a second baseman, third baseman, and he just hits. He hits like crazy. He's super annoying to play against. He's got some speed, a little bit of pop. He would be a solid prospect. Like he's the sort of guy that if the Tigers traded and they got him, everyone would be all upset because he's not one of their top 10 prospects that they've heard of. And then he'll come up and he'll hit 330, and people go, "Oh, well, this is all right." So he would be an interesting name. Kobe Mayo's a fun one because he's a big power hitting third baseman, maybe first baseman down the line, maybe corner outfielder. But yeah, I think you mentioned Connor Norby. They've got Hudson Haskin. They got Judd Fabian. They've got a lot of interesting names out there in the outfield and in the infield. They have a surplus, and they can use it to get major league talent. Will they? I don't know. We haven't seen Michael Elias do that yet. They traded. Who did they trade to get Fujinami? Nobody. Like I don't remember.
Yeah.
The dude's name. Like
I don't think Fujinami was even having that great of a season either.
he's
Well,
not.
after the switch, he got better.
Yeah, he's got a huge arm, and he was terrible as a starter, and he'd been pitching better out of the bullpen. I mean, we saw him dominate the Tigers for an inning.
Ooh. Yeah, he did.
But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I was listening to as we were coming back from South Bend the other day. I was listening to the Ballpark Dimensions podcast, and it was kind of their trade special. They were going through and looking at teams and who they could trade and what they might be able to get, and they just kind of glossed over the Tigers. They didn't think about the Tigers at all, really, which makes me wonder if at a national level maybe we're overrating Rodriguez and Lorenzen, but they spent a lot more time talking about like Lucas Giolito and Marcus Stroman, and so maybe the Tigers. I don't know. It depends on what the asking prices are for those other guys, but maybe we're overestimating what the Tigers can get.